Hi Pre-K, we're gonna make some marker prints together. So let's gather our materials. First, we'll need another piece of that watercolor paper that was in your bag. We'll need a piece of styrofoam. Remember, this is what we use to make our lotus pod prints. It's that thick, light, kind of shiny material. You should have a piece that's about this size in your bag as well, so you can grab that. We'll need markers. These are the markers that are in your little toolkits, the ones that we use at school. So why don't you go and get those. And the last thing we'll need is actually a wet sponge. So it doesn't have to be so wet, but we're gonna be using this to make our paper wet after we've made our drawing, before we do our print. So a wet sponge is kind of the extra secret ingredient. We'll put away our white watercolor paper for now. We'll use that to print on, but first we're gonna work with our plate. When we did our lotus pod printmaking, we called this a plate. This is the first piece of art that we'll make, and then print it, make a copy onto the white paper. So I have my styrofoam. Like I said, this is kind of shiny. See if you can tell which side is shinier. There's one side that's a little bit shinier and a little bit flatter and smoother. Doesn't really matter, but if you can find that side, that's the side that we want facing at us, towards us. And to make our artwork to print, we're just gonna draw with markers. Since this is a time, Pre-K, for us to really just experiment with materials, there's no really rules for what you have to draw or for what you should draw. So I'm actually just gonna use my markers as colors and make some blocks of colors. I'll show you a couple ways you can use the markers. You can use the point. I'll be gentle, but I'm making a very kind of a thin line by using the tip or that point of the marker. I can turn my marker on its side like that and make much thicker, bigger lines. I could also, I've seen some friends do this at school. I could use a few markers at the same time. So, took 3 colors, I'm going to hold them at once and then move them around together in my hand. So this is a good way to mix colors. All right. I'll try one more color. Maybe I'll use my red. I haven't used that yet. I'm going to fill in some of my white spaces. Remember, you can do whatever you like. The only kind of goal, what we want to do with this, is to fill up most of the styrofoam. You can have some white space, that's totally fine. But we'll fill up as much as we can just because it makes the print a little bit stronger. All right, there is my plate all filled up. I chose to make some lines, some shapes. I use my marker in different ways, but it's really all about the color for me. I'll grab my paper and put my plate aside, that styrofoam. Here's my white piece of watercolor paper. This is where my wet sponge is gonna come in. I'm gonna use my wet sponge and just kind of wipe it on top of the paper. The paper will really start to suck it up. It drinks up the water. It's used to that. It's watercolor paper. We're gonna get it as wet as you can. It shouldn't be so wet that there's puddles on top of the paper, but you really want to make sure that that water is inside the paper and ready to catch the marker that's on the plate. Okay, so there's my wet paper. Here comes my plate. I'm gonna flip it upside down. That's how we make the print, how we make the copy. Put it there and then press as hard as I can. I'm gonna press and try not to wiggle it around. I want it to stay in the spot that I placed it down in, but I'm pressing it down. I wanna make sure that all of my marker prints onto my paper. Okay, there you go. The big reveal. 3, 2, 1. There it is. There's my print. The marker that was on my plate is now on my paper. So that's what I made, but I know, friends, that you will make something totally different because we're all our own artists, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.